What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the all-new 2019 Hyundai Santa Fe. Huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me with this all-new Santa Fe to review for you guys today. So about the redesigned Santa Fe here, well, like I said, all new for 2019, and I think it looks so much better than the old Santa Fe to me. This is just so much more muscular, a little more blocky looking, very bold. You know, it continues on with the styling theme that they started off with the Kona, and has spread across the lineup now with you know, these very sleek accent lights up front there and on the top, and then you have the real headlights actually down lower in the front bumper there. But I think it's actually a really great look. I also love the wide grille and the spacing you have there with those wide holes in it. I think it looks really, really sharp. I also like the creases in the hood. Just everything up front here just looks really just a very nice, strong improvement to me. And you still can get the old styling for the Santa Fe XL, which is the 3-row version. The new regular Santa Fe now is just the 2-row version, and that's it. That's all you can get with this version. We do know also Hyundai has the new Palisade coming, and that will be a true larger 3-row SUV. But the Santa Fe, I really like the proportions here. You know, going down to the sides here, you have these nice larger wheels that look really sharp. And I also like the little indentations you have here around the fenders, which again gives a little bit more of a taut look than it had in the past, and just seems very nicely sculpted. And then going out back there, I also just really love those new tail lamps. I think they're really cool looking. I like the way they're kind of segmented there around that type of ring assortment you have going on in those tail lamps there. It looks really good. And otherwise though, you know, it's just nice and again chiseled off there in the back, and I think it looks really good. And so from just about every single angle, I think the design improvement is already a huge leap forward for the new Santa Fe, and the improvements also continue on to the inside. Rest for the interior of the 2019 Santa Fe. Well, it's really nicely improved here on the inside. So anyway, first things first, sitting down in these seats, you have these really nice soft leather seats here in the ultimate version of the Santa Fe. That's what we're in now, which is top of the line here. And they're pretty comfortable seats. They have great torso support. Thigh support is pretty good as well too for an SUV of this class. And so, you know, very soft, comfortable seats. They're also heated and cooled here in the Santa Fe, which is very cool. And so nice to have those features here in the ultimate trim, of course. And some of the lower trims, you only have the heated seats or none at all, depending on what trim you're in. But next is the steering wheel here in the Santa Fe, which is really great as well. Has a really nice 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches, and just a nice leather wrapped wheel. Has a few little buttons here on it that kind of feel like metal for the little rocker switches here to control a few things. Otherwise, just a few plastic buttons, but you know, a nicely uncluttered steering wheel, which I really appreciate. That, you know, there's not a million buttons like you see on some other vehicles these days, and it's overall a great steering wheel. Next to the gauges here on the Santa Fe, which are very nicely improved for 2019 here. First off, on the left and the right there, you have the tachometer and the fuel and coolant gauges, which are kind of cool the way they're kind of angled there, and it almost kind of reflects the tail lamp design, which I kind of appreciate, and I really like the way those look, a little different. But right in the middle there, you have a nice large high resolution screen that is, you know, very vibrant with its colors and looks really good, and you know, gives you a large analog and digital speed readout, which is great to have, as well as your gear indicator, and looks pretty good. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't give you any additional information. Some of these other digital gauge clusters will give you a lot of nice additional stuff. It's still the same basic stuff as if you were to have a small little center screen like you see on lower grade vehicles. And so, you know, it just goes through your basics, you know, your tire pressure sensors. It will show your all-wheel drive split, which is cool to see that. But other than that, it's basically just your trip odometer, you know, fuel economy stuff. So a little underwhelming there. I was hoping they'd be able to put, you know, media or directions or things like that in there. It'd be kind of a nice inclusion, but nice to have the digital gauges nonetheless, and hopefully that's something they'll improve on over the years. You also do have a heads-up display here in the ultimate version of the Santa Fe, and unlike other Hyundais, it is a true heads-up display. It's not a little plexiglass screen that pops up. It's actually projected onto the windshield there. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, there's a few interesting things I've noticed. First is I love how on the passenger side there you have a reflection of the driver's side, kind of where you have this little ridge that blends into the doors there. And there's a few other cars these days that do that, and I really like the way that looks. I think it's really sharp looking. I also love you have what looks like a leather covered dashboard. Unfortunately, it isn't. It looks much nicer than it feels, but it does have a little bit of give to it, and you know, it just is a nice way to make it feel a little more upmarket here. Anyway, still nice to have that. And then you have this large infotainment display, which is really great. It's your typical Hyundai infotainment infotainment system. They're the same in all of them, really. This one has a nice large screen for it, and a few hard buttons here on the left and the right. You thankfully do have a volume and a tune knob, which isn't a given in a lot of other cars these days, so great to have both of those. I really appreciate that. It does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard as well, which is great, and this one has navigation here, being the top trim as well, which is good. The standard Hyundai maps, they're nothing too impressive, but you get the job done if you don't want to use CarPlay or Android Auto. And otherwise, scrolling through radio stations, things like that is all very easy here. This one also has an Infinity by Harman stereo system, and I really love the way this speaker design looks. It's very wavy, and it's really just a cool texture, and so nice to have a little bit of an upgraded stereo here that looks nice and also should sound pretty nice here, but I'll be testing that out over my week of driving. Another nice little thing I want to mention here briefly is you have a little bit of a padded knee area. Now, it's only on the lower part of the transmission tunnel here. On the upper part, you still have some hard plastic, but still nice to have at least a little bit of padding there, although it would be nice if it went all the way up. But it's a start, and so I really appreciate that here in these higher trims of the Santa Fe as well. You have automatic climate control here as well, which has these nice, actually feel like real knurled metal knobs here, which is a nice little improvement. Usually they felt a little more plasticky in the past. This feels a little nicer, a little more premium. A nice little display for it, and then you just have your simple row of buttons for the seat controls and your heated steering wheel. Coming down, you have this nice large bin that has a USB jack, two USB jacks in fact, but one is only for charging, the other's for data. And then you also have an auxiliary jack and a traditional power outlet, and then you also have a Qi wireless charging pad too, which is a great inclusion. And this is really just a nice deep cubby, so for storage space purposes, I mean, you can fit all kinds of stuff in there. Other spaces, you have a bottle holder here in the doors with other little various pockets in the doors, which is great to see. Coming back over to the center here, you have two traditional size cup holders, which are good and nicely out of the way. You have another little cutout here in front of your armrest. You can fit a few things in there. It's a usable size, although probably not big enough for a smartphone or something like that. And then you have the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded, and you open that up, and you have this little removable tray up top, which is pretty deep on its own. You could probably fit a smaller smartphone. But then you have this very deep area here, which doesn't have any additional plugs or anything like that, but still just a nice, large, deep, and wide space in there. And as an added bonus, on the passenger side here, you'll see that another nice wide cutout. You can fit some stuff now. It does have a little bit of a ledge to it, a little bit of a way to hold stuff in. And this is nicely rubberized as well, so you could fit stuff in there. It goes fairly far back. Might be able to fit your smartphone or something late in there. A nice little inclusion to have. Just extra little spaces here for the passenger as well. Another random thing I want to mention here is the headliner, which I usually never talk about, but this one, it's this like very different colored and feeling material. So it's like a beige color, but it feels like it's almost like a t-shirt material, kind of silky, very soft, but just a very different. Usually they're just gray or black, but for this one to be like a brownish color, it just really jumped out at me and really blends nicely with the beige leather seats here. And so just another little different touch here that I appreciate about the Santa Fe. Backseat space in the Santa Fe is really spacious and really well done. I think, since they focus on only making it a two-row here for the Santa Fe, they were able to really maximize that second row and make it very spacious and comfortable as well. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have probably about 4 inches of legroom to spare back there. Plenty of headroom as well, even though you have this panoramic moonroof, which, probably limits it a little bit more. If you didn't have that, you'd have even more headroom, but still plenty of headroom for me. And those seats also, in addition to just being pretty comfortable, they also do slide forwards and backwards. Now, my four inches of legroom there was with the seats slid all the way back, but you can slide it forward if you want to have more cargo space. They also do recline as well, which is a really cool feature. And so a few other SUVs in this segment have it, but not all of them. And that's really nice to have, so that if you want to sleep or just kind of lounge back there, it'll slide way far back there and give you a nice reclined position. Also, when you look forward, you'll see 2 air vents. You'll see another little cubby there for people to put their stuff in. And then you'll also find 2 USB jacks and then a regular house current plug too, which is really cool. Sometimes you'll get another cigarette lighter type power outlet back there, but this has a normal plug, which is really cool to see. You'll also see a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it, but then you also have bottle holders in each of the doors as well for beverages back there. And so overall, a really nice back seat. Going on to the trunk area, the cargo space is fantastic here in the Santa Fe. I mean, a massive amount of space, again, since you don't have to worry about a third row, just tons and tons of space there. Very wide, very long, and pretty deep as well. But if it isn't deep enough, you can actually lift up the floor there. There's two different segments. You'll see closer to you, you have a nice, pretty large area there that you can fit, obviously you see some of the spare tire stuff on the right, but on the left you have a nice deep cubby. But then you look further back there and you'll see that whole area lifts up, and then you have three massive cubbies there, and like you can even see I fit my slider in that one, so that shows you just how large those are. So I mean, that's like a whole second trunk underneath the floor there. And obviously you can also remove those covers if you don't need a flat load floor there. So I mean, just a massive amount of space back there, and it's also a power closed tailgate as well, which is a great feature too. And so overall, just a fantastic cargo area. All right, so starting to go for a drive. The Santa Fe here has this nice textured key. It's a little bit of like a satin finish to the key. Has some glossy black buttons there on the back. A little bit of metal trim on it, or plastic, looks like metal, but feels very nice actually. Has a nice weight to it, and just overall a really nice key. But of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here in the Santa Fe Ultimate. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2019 Hyundai Santa Fe. So the first thing you notice, well, it's definitely a little bit of a larger vehicle now. The Santa Fe has grown about 2.8 inches overall, which isn't huge, but it just makes it feel a little bit bigger. The wheelbase is 2.6 inches longer as well, so it gives it a little more of a sure-footed ride than the previous Santa Fe, although I have not reviewed the previous Santa Fe, so I can't do a direct comparison. But one thing I can say is visibility is fantastic here in the new Santa Fe. I mean, you have these nice thin A-pillars. You have a nice little window here in between the mirror and the A-pillar, which is always great for visibility whenever they move those mirrors away from the A-pillar and kind of separate it so you can see around that pillar. Really just works wonders, and so very easy to see forward here in the Santa Fe. And view out of the sides is also pretty good. With a B-pillar, it is a little further back there, so it's not too bad. And then view out of the back is also pretty good. You have just a nice square cut out like you do in most SUVs. The headrests don't get in the way really too much, and so overall a very easy vehicle to drive in that regard. You also have, at least here in the Ultimate version, the bird's eye view when you're parking for the backup camera, so you can see the sides and in front of you as well. So that makes it very easy to maneuver, at low speed situations too. And then cruising down a main road here, it's a nice smooth ride for the most part. The only thing that I will notice, it is nice and quiet in here whenever you're just coasting, but whenever you do get on the gas here, the engine has a little bit more buzziness to it than I think maybe some of the competitors do, but overall it still is very refined. You also have an 8-speed automatic here, which is a nice improvement over the 6-speed these previously had. Not a dual clutch, thankfully, just a normal automatic. Shifts very predictably and works very well so far, and so I'm really appreciative this has a normal automatic. And otherwise, though, it's a very smooth and comfortable ride here. Of course, that's what the Santa Fe is set up for, and so on a nice smooth road like this, it really just glides along. But we're gonna go ahead and put it into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Took a second, then it kicked down, and then it takes off very nicely. So the Santa Fe here for 2019 in the Ultimate trim runs the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It does 230 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque, and feels pretty punchy. 0 to 60 time is 7.8 seconds according to Car and Driver when they tested it, and it sounds about right. This is a 4,032 pounds for the curb weight, so I mean that's a decent amount of weight to lug around with only 230 horsepower, 260 pound-feet. So it's not going to light your hair on fire, but it's certainly adequate. I do appreciate that they gave it turbo power and gave it a decent amount. This isn't quite as much as you get in some of the larger SUVs with their 3-row configurations and things like that, but this should be sufficient and very competitive with a lot of these other 2-row SUVs, although some do outmuscle it a little bit, but this is a good amount of power. Now, if you go for the base Santa Fe, then you're stuck with a 2.4 liter naturally aspirated engine, which has, I think, like only 180 horsepower. So that might feel a little more lethargic. But this with the turbo motor is a pretty strong runner, and for an SUV and for the type of daily driving purposes people put these through, I think it's more than enough power. But I certainly think that this upgrade is worthwhile because it does feel pretty nice and peppy here with the turbo motor. Although there is a little bit of a delay or a lag before you really start, it downshifts and then the turbo spools up and then you start going forward. There's a little bit of a disconnect, not quite as immediate as you would like in something sportier, but again, for the type of segment this vehicle competes in, I think it's going to be just fine. Now, the acceleration. That time I had the wheels turned because I wanted to see how the all-wheel drive system copes. So this has the HTAC all-wheel drive system that Hyundai calls their system. It feels pretty sure-footed so far now. It's a nice, dry, warmer day, so shouldn't give it any kind of challenge, really. So we'll see, during my week of driving if it, does well with all the rain we're supposed to be getting later in the week here. But we're coming up some corners here, and let's see how it handles. Now, this is just a family SUV, so not going to push it too much. But it does a decent job with its handling. There's a little bit of roll to it, a little bit of lean, but feels fairly planted and pretty competent, I have to say, as far as handling goes. Considering its weight and its size, it does a pretty good job. We're on Continental cross-contact tires. They're 235 wide, 19-inch wheels we're running here. For the Ultimate trim, you'd have smaller wheels and even taller sidewalls on the lower trim, so I think this is probably the best handling of the Santa Fe's. And yeah, I think it does a pretty good job. Again, nothing sports car-like. I don't think it's best in class either, but it is certainly up there with some of the best, I think, and very respectable handling here. Got a little bit of a slicker surface with some water here. Let's see how it grips a little bit. Does a good job, and we're still in sport mode here, so it's kind of keeping it at some of the higher RPMs for me too. Very responsive, so that as soon as I get on the gas, it does give me good power there. So I think that first acceleration kind of let me down for a split second, but this transmission does seem to be very responsive once you're up and running, once you're going around those corners and stuff, it knows I'm trying to be a little bit more sportier with my driving here, and so it responds nicely, and I appreciate that. So feels pretty good, again, it's just an SUV. It's not a thing it's not going to handle certainly as well as a car. It's not going to be as good as a normal family sedan with its handling. Those are flatter and a little lighter, but for what this is, it handles very well. A couple other things to note while we're going around some corners here is the steering has a pretty nice feel to it. It has a little bit of feedback and weight to it, but it still feels appropriately lighter for an SUV here, but feels pretty good so far. Also, throttle response is pretty good. There's a little bit of a tip-in point, and then it's very responsive. Feels pretty good as much as it can for a turbocharged engine. There's always, again, a little bit of a disconnect there. Brakes, as we're using them here, have a really great amount of feel to them, where it's just a little bit of pedal travel, but then those brakes really start to clamp down, and so they feel pretty strong too, and so I really like the way that feels. And so overall, all the driver things are very well dialed in. There isn't any kind of disconnects really, or any kind of disappointments. It just drives nicely, and with each new generation here of these SUVs, they just get better and better, a little more car-like in their handling, better handling, more precise, just everything is just dialed in more and more, so that they're just better driving vehicles than they ever have been. And this new Santa Fe certainly applies to that. It's just really just a great thing to drive. Again, you can't push it too much in the corners or anything, but for what it is, it does a great job. But yes, that's about all I can glean here so far, but thanks to Hyundai, I'm going to have this Santa Fe here for an entire week. So I'm going to drive around all week, and I'll come back and give you guys my final thoughts, as well as my final fuel economy and my thoughts on the pricing as well. Alright, so I've been driving the 2019 Hyundai Santa Fe Ultimate here for a week now, and it's actually a really enjoyable SUV to drive, with one caveat, which I'll get to in a minute here. But first, it just was great for just cruising around. It has this stop-start tech, which I didn't talk about previously, but it's a pretty quick stop-starting system where it kind of was pretty intelligent with how and when it shut down, and then when it started back up, it was very quick. It wasn't too jerky or too loud or annoying. So I actually left it on for most of my driving here throughout the week. So that was well done. Another thing is just I had this over the week of Christmas, and so that large cargo area is really great for transporting all kinds of gifts and stuff. But even like just bringing groceries home, I really enjoyed the little small little pocket there in the trunk. And you know, a lot of these others, they have a huge cargo cover, and you know, it's like you open up the whole thing and you have the whole floor there. Whereas I like how there's just a little pocket in the front there. You can just put a few grocery bags in there very easily. That way they don't slide all over the place and slide to way far back in the cargo area there. And I just really like the way that was set up. And so that's another thing that I really appreciated here. One thing though that was the glaring annoyance driving the Santa Fe. Now it wasn't a huge annoyance, but it's just the turbo lag. This engine has some of the more pronounced turbo lag I've noticed in this segment, and just in turbo vehicles in general, where there's always like a surge. Like now this automatic, you know, you have this 8-speed automatic that's pretty intelligent. Does a pretty good job of figuring out, you know, what it needs to do, and I think it makes the best with what it has to work with. But even once this transmission responds, gives me a downshift, and then I'm still waiting for the turbo to spool up sometimes, and then it, like, you know, wants to plant you in the back of your seat, and it's like it's an on or off switch sometimes, where I wish the turbo boost came on a little more progressively, a little more gradually, so that whenever I'm waiting for it, you know, it's not just like this, just nothing, and then boom. You know, that's fun in sports cars and stuff, but in an SUV, when I just want to have gentle, smooth acceleration, you know, it's just a little hard to be smooth with the acceleration here in the Santa Fe, where it just wants to just go nuts, you know, if you tip in a little bit more. But if you don't tip in enough, then you're waiting around for that turbo to spool up. So that's the only thing that annoyed me. And there's other, you know, most of the competitors these days in this segment do have turbocharged engines, but a lot of them just do it a little more smoothly, where there isn't any kind of you know, waiting around or wondering, you know, what's going on with the whole setup. And so I think it's just, you know, it's not bad. 5 years ago I would say it was average, but these days they've gotten a lot more refined in other competing vehicles. So that's the only thing I can complain. Otherwise, this engine actually has a lot of power. When I originally first, you know, stomped on it the first few times, I was like, oh, it's pretty quick. But the more that I drove it in traffic and stuff, I mean, it is a strong engine. Once that turbo does decide to jump in and help you out, then it definitely has a great performance there. So I really appreciated that about it. It's you know, plenty of power for sure with this engine, so no complaints there. Even though the number being only 230 on paper doesn't seem like a, you know, a wow number compared to, again, some of the competitors that might be a little bit higher. But this is certainly more than enough for daily driving stuff, and felt pretty good. But the last two things I want to mention here are the fuel economy I got here and the pricing of the Santa Fe. First, for the fuel economy, I drove 185 miles, and in those miles, I averaged 18.1 mpg, which is okay. Now, I did do a little more highway driving than usual, so I was hoping to get a little bit of a better number, because these are rated at 19 in the city, 24 on the highway, for a combined average of 21. And that's actually identical to even stuff like the Kia Sorento, which is a 3-row SUV, a little bit of an older, you know, naturally aspirated 3.3 liter V6 in that one. And that vehicle actually has the same exact EPA ratings as this, and that averaged 19 mpg versus 18.1. I mean, we're only talking about 1 mpg, but the fact that an older engine, bigger, heavier vehicle with a 3rd row and all that stuff, you know, it got better fuel economy than what is supposed to be the more fuel efficient 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo motor, you know, a little bit of a lighter vehicle. So I'm a little disappointed in the fuel economy, to be honest. I was hoping to at least get the city number, despite the fact that I did a pretty close mix to 50-50. Not quite exactly, but I did do a good amount of highway driving in this. So again, there was some idling in this being winter time and stuff, and a lot of stop and go with holiday traffic and everything. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but just something I wanted to mention there. The last thing I want to mention, though, is the pricing here of the Santa Fe. Now, you know, obviously these start in the, you know, mid $20,000 range, but this one, as tested, is $39,905, and so just under $40,000 there. That's a pretty competitive price, considering all the nice stuff you get that, you know, sometimes you don't get until you go up to more expensive exclusive vehicles in this segment, you know, as far as having the heated steering wheel, the heated and cooled seats, the Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, both as standard and free, which is great. And so all those types of things, you know, it's nice. Yes, I really like, you know, the leather and stuff feels pretty good. And I mean, yeah, some of the materials in here aren't, you know, luxury level, and they're not even quite as nice as maybe a couple of the competitors, but it is so much nicer in here than previous Hyundais in the past. They've come so far on these interiors, and so I think it's really a nice leap forward in quality and in just about everything here, and the way everything's set up, the ergonomics, everything is really well done here in the Santa Fe. So I really appreciate that. And so I mean, at that price point, you know, it depends. I mean, yes, you can get some other stuff that's roughly the same price, but I think the great thing is you have the nice large size of the Santa Fe here, but it doesn't try and be a 3-row. It's not squeezing some cramped 3rd row in here. You know, they're going to have the full-on Palisade, which will be a proper large 3-row SUV for those who really want to have a good 3-row SUV. I like they focus on this being 2 rows. It's a very great 2-row SUV. I love having all the space in the back. And honestly, I think it even drives better than stuff like the Jeep Grand Cherokees that are super popular, but also very dated these days. And you have, you know, a very similar amount of space like you do in those. And I think, you know, this is going to be a little more fuel efficient and just a little more of a car-like ride, which I think most daily, you know, driving commuters will actually appreciate. But yeah, overall, I think the Santa Fe is definitely worth checking out and a great choice for those who want, you know, one of these larger 2-row SUVs. So anyway, huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me with the Santa Fe here to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the Santa Fe in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.